and welcome to this episode of Diverse Perspectives. I am your solo host this week, filling in for Samira Ali, Leena Sharma Seth, and I'm excited to spend the next little while with you in conversation with today's guest. First, we open with a land acknowledgement.
Ojo, Sego, Tanshe, greetings. Halton Region acknowledges the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, as well as the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and Anishinaabeg on which we gather. In stewardship with Mother Earth and the enduring Indigenous presence connected to these lands, we acknowledge the Indigenous nations of the past, present, and future. In the spirit of allyship and mutual respect, we will take the path of truth and reconciliation to create change, awareness, and equity as we strive to elevate the collective consciousness of society. Miigwech, Nyawe, Marcy, thank you.
Okay, and so I want to get right to it. I'm so excited to be in conversation today with our guest. And so what I will do is I'm going to make an introduction here. So Gennile Thomas, founder of Halton Black Voices, is a Black Canadian woman, activist, athlete, and mother with a background in community organizing, labor studies, and media arts. Raised in the Halton region, Gennile recognized a need for wellness and educational programs to develop essential resources for marginalized groups in our community. Fueled by her passion for equity and social justice, Gennile founded Halton Black Voices in 2020 in an effort to develop policies and programs that would address the significant needs that exist in Halton. In her work, Gennile aims to work inclusively with Halton residents, business groups, leaders, stakeholders to develop anti-racist programs for corporate and community groups. Gennile looks forward to deepening her connections with members of the Indigenous and the 2S LGBTQIA communities in all of her work. She welcomes Halton residents to join the Halton Black Voices Grassroots Collective, to engage and participate in the Halton Black Voices anti-racist book clubs, healing circles, and equity learning spaces. Welcome, Gennile.
Thank you, Leena. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
For sure, for sure. And yeah, there's just so many places I was thinking we could go in our conversation, but I figured let's start with, tell us a little bit more about Halton Black Voices and what prompted you to move into that, to launch this in our community.
Yeah, well, after witnessing a lot of the police violence brutality in 2020 and the incident with the murder of George Floyd, it really put a fire in me to do something. I've got a 12-year-old son that means the world to me, and I want to leave this world safe for him. So that's why I started Halton Black Voices, was to kind of build a community around our people.
It means so much to hear you say that, and I feel like the best movements have been sparked by some folks who are touched personally. That whole lived experience is so critical. And I just remember that summer of 2020 and being so inspired by seeing the movement that you helped to seed here in our community and to build that awareness. Not to say that there hasn't been commitment in our community in some ways, but just to see the ways that your group has just, I feel, innovated and just really worked to create offerings that really meet needs in a way that I think we haven't seen before. So just really excited and have been inspired by all that's been done in the years since 2020. So yeah, I wanted to maybe open with a question that you and I have talked about outside of the space, but I thought for the benefit of our viewers who perhaps it may be a new line of conversation, but I was sharing with Gennile that one of the questions I was asked early on in 2020 was this question around, are you a business person or an activist? And so I thought we could, lean into that and talk about the binary of that offer even. And so, yeah, when you hear that question, what's that response for you?
That response is and both. And I think there's space for both of those entities to coexist. Like when we talk about the binary frame of either this or that, it's very limiting and constricting to what we can do impact that we can have. I think you can be both a business person and an advocate and an activist. There's space for both, definitely. And you can see the nuances in that once you kind of describe and talk about what it is that you're doing for the community or for your workplace.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that idea that I remember when I first received that question, really feeling like, do I have to choose? And over time, I was really new in my own business journey. So in the beginning, I was like, is that a question I really have to, like, I have to make a choice? And really the thing, especially in this moment in time, I feel like, so many of us, it's a false choice, right? That really, it's an and conversation, as you say, and that really we can use our power, our privilege, and our platform to shift, to compass us towards justice. And that oftentimes I think about conversations that I've worked to drive in our community and the important role that business can play, that, I can't see us realizing a just world or a just community without the contribution and the narrative and the voice of business. And so it's just something that really it's an and thing, and that we can be compassing towards justice and be successful as business owners. So appreciating what we get to dig into with that question.
Yeah, because business people are essentially activists for capitalism, right? So there is space where you can be a business person and be an activist for a social justice issue, for something for certain groups of people that need that support. And as a business person, you understand your privilege and the resources that you have. So it is something you can be and both of. Mm-hmm. And it's important not to allow other people, when they ask that question, to limit yourself. Because if you do answer that question in a binary framework, then you essentially you are limiting yourself for it.
Absolutely. I love that. And just that idea that we do get to choose in this moment, and that I've actually seen clients and customers really celebrate when businesses do take that leadership position, right? And so especially since the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, really in 2020, with what you kind of narrated around that time, it's like, I think there is that need, that almost that accountability that consumers and customers may be looking for, is like, if I can use my money to support businesses and leaders who are standing up, and that's becoming more and more important. So I appreciate that you named that as well. And so, I talking about 2020, it's been a couple of years now, and I'm wondering, from your perspective, what do you think has changed in our community? What are you noticing? And I'd say turn that spotlight internally, like as a leader, what's shifted for you since 2020 in the equity, inclusion, justice, anti-racist space?
Yeah, I'm seeing how language and verbiage is changing. The narrative is changing. I think a lot of people on the individual level are really reflecting on their own privilege, their own positionality, or even their own marginalization. I think people are being aware of how they intersect with society and have impact on society, which is great. I think that level of awareness is a great first step to recognize how you impact and how you contribute to the world that you live in.
Oh, I love that. And you're right, the language that people are using, and we've seen no shortage of book clubs pop up, and some of which Halton Black Voices facilitated. And to me, they're an important vehicle for building community around critical topics. And so I'm thinking about some of the experiences I had the privilege of being involved with last year with you around facilitating the My Grandmother's Hands book club, and the fact that you were even using and experimenting and deepening our ability to be in caucusing spaces or affinity groups, where I had the privilege of being in a BIPOC group and facilitating that. And that was really amazing to be able to have some of these conversations with folks who look like us and move like us, right? Which I think for those who are not dominant culture, it's an important space for us, I think, for healing. I think that was part of your vision, was to give us spaces to hear each other, to connect with each other. And I even like to say to deepen our own inquiry around our complicity with anti-Blackness, right? As someone who is in a brown body, a child of South Asian immigrants, and really understanding the ways, as someone in this body, there are ways I experience oppression, but there's also ways that I experience privilege, and to build community spaces to even grapple with that, because that's something a longing that I know I had, and through that work, it was really helpful to see that not only are we all like in community seeking that now, and signing up for that, and really appreciating that is this leadership emerging. Because I saw the libraries were a part of that across Halton, and so really, I guess I'm kind of answering the question a little bit myself, but just seeing the choice that was finally available in our community to do this work in different ways, right? Whether it's, I continue to see lots of focus now on speakers with lived experience, bringing different intersectional experiences and narratives into our spaces. So we as leaders, whether we're leading organizations, whether we're frontline staff, whether we're business owners, whoever we are, that we're beginning to build, like to say, our muscle to understand what are these issues and how do they show up in our community. Because that's the thing I think I've noticed most, is that, before 2020, there really wasn't as much awareness, or that this is a problem here in our community, that equity has the issues that it does have. And so I feel like there's a much broader and deeper recognition that this is happening here in our community, and this is the work of our community. And so those are one of the things that I've noticed. And the other piece is solidarity, in terms of I've found solidarity in interesting places, and also looking for solidarity. I think that's one of the things, and I know that's on our list of things to explore, is, how can we be in deeper solidarity? And yeah, when you hear that, what comes up for you, Gennile?
Yeah, so for solidarity, for me, it's like being in spaces where you can foster deeper conversations, right? I think, we have to build solidarity with people that we know, and people that we relate to, and people we want to support. But in order for that to happen, you can't just step in the room and say, I'm here to support you. You have to understand who you're supporting and why you're supporting them. And that requires, a level of vulnerability. It requires a level of like deeper conversations, and a broadening or a deepness of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like bringing the human back to why we are doing this work. And it's about spirit too, right? And that is where solidarity comes from, is the connectedness with spirit and your community.
I love it. You talk about solidarity on so many levels, that spiritual, that emotional, that it could be economic solidarity. Like there's, I think, such potential. And and when I'm thinking about solidarity, I think about the fact that we've also seen the rise of a few movements in Halton that were not as I'm going to say as centralized in terms of the way that we think about the issues in our community. And one of the lingering things or curiosities I have is what does solidarity look like in this community in terms of across movements? And I think about the quote that some of it I attribute to Mia McKenzie, that, I feel like the work of equity is to build solidarity across difference, with difference, and really to engage meaningfully with difference. Not something we're all good at, but something that I think this moment in time is asking us to get better at that. And so I'm wondering, what are you noticing in terms of solidarity across movements?
People are pouring out resources in ways that we haven't seen before. So everyone understands like what they can contribute, and they are contributing that, whether it's through time, whether it's through finances. I think there's opportunities for everyone to partake in solidarity for each other, for sure.
I feel like you have done, like Halton Black Voices has formed some really interesting partnerships. And I think about some of the work, and maybe you can tell us more about that, like Conservation Halton. I've seen some partnerships there, or some really fantastic initiatives. So from your perspective, what's happening, or what is Halton Black Voices touching right now that our viewers should know about?
Well, yeah, we're taking up spaces in typical areas that we weren't privy to. So we make sure that like we're reconnecting with nature. And what does that look like? You know, we're holding hikes for Black families and Black youth out in Conservation Halton, which is a great partnership that we've developed over the years. We're bringing students in to do anti-racism programming. So, you know, allowing non-Black students, giving them the tools to how to advocate and support their Black friends, right? Because they understand that that relationship, that connection with them is very important. And then we're also building collective power among the Black community within Halton. I think, you know, a lot of us live in such isolation, and at this point, it's time to bring everyone sort of together, because we do have common ground, we do have similarities, and there's ways that we can support and love each other. So I think gathering in spaces that typically we weren't invited to or felt comfortable in, that is part of the resistance. We are taking up space in spaces that, you know, we weren't necessarily always invited to be part of.
That is so amazing. And of course, my mind goes to allyship, because I feel like that's a common question of like, how can we be in allyship? What are we supposed to do? And I feel like some of the things you offer really lean into the fact that some of the things people are experiencing is fear around making a mistake or fear around not doing it right. And so to your point, you'd said like, if folks want to help, it's not about like just jumping in and saying, this is what I'm doing. It's about taking the time to really understand the issues, taking the time to understand why is this important to you. But I feel like, you know, when you talked about the anti-racism program for youth or students right now that's open, I love that you're like, no, we want to invite non-Black students, because this is to me about building capacity and resourcing people to know how to be an ally. And so especially for young people, I know I told you, I'm like, my daughter is definitely signing up. And so we'll make sure that there's some resources that are shown here, so folks who are joining us today can sign up their children as well right now. So that's an amazing piece to see. And yeah, is there anything else that's coming down? Any sneak previews about what's coming down the pipeline in terms of from Halton Black Voices to look forward to? We're heading into some warmer months.
Yes, so definitely. We've got a Black Joy Gala coming up soon in June. And then in August, we're doing a community healing picnic and Black camp out. So that allows Black families that typically had never camped before, have that experience within Halton to camp, to know what it's like to put up a tent, to sleep under the starlight, under the moonlight, and to connect with nature. And then in the fall, we're going to be doing like a vendors event for Black-owned businesses versus like commodities and technology, like all those entities that Black folks and their allies do want to come out and support. So we are going to be focusing on Black-owned businesses within Halton and supporting the business and work that they do.
That's amazing. So viewers, stay tuned. Make sure that you visit the website that we share here. So many great things to get involved in and ways to support Black community, Black businesses, Black youth, and really, you know, as I say, find your place in this work and use your power and your privilege. So I want to take a few minutes just to talk about something that, again, you and I have talked about around something that unfolded in January that really many of us saw the writing on the wall and knew that, you know, it's something to be paying attention to. I'm thinking about what was called the Freedom Convoy movement. I'm not sure, I definitely don't feel great about that language, because freedom is not what I think of when I think about that movement. But I'm wondering, you know, what's continuing to sit with you? You know, we're a few months out from that, and of course we see fits and spurts. It's not completely over, but you know, and for those of our viewers who maybe were not familiar with what happened, but there was a convoy that moved from across the country to Ottawa in January, and it really for several weeks really deeply disrupted, and I'd say, you know, even caused harm to that community, as well as anyone who's involved in the work, and also just as citizens. I feel like part of me was like, are we all seeing the same thing? Because I'm not sure the reaction matches the level of concern that's really alive. So from your perspective, you know, where are we at, or what's the opportunity in this moment?
The opportunity is to really recognize that you can mobilize people for good. People do want to get out on these streets. So it's just understanding the nuance and like, how do organizations or agencies on the left organize, prepare their people to do something similar to the convoy, not necessarily go out and disrupt, other societies and other cities that they don't belong to, but how do you build that level of solidarity on the left? How do you bring that support for other politicians or other activists to help do the good work on the left, and provide that sort of space where those can organize, those can practice their verbiage, those can practice their opinions or their debates. I think we need to hold space for those that do want to do good, that do want to protect women's rights, to protect Black lives, to protect our youth, to provide shelter for the unhoused, provide healthcare for all. So it's like, how do those people that do see the gaps in our society organize in that sort of capacity like the convoy did?
Absolutely. So much in your response there. And the thing that resonates for me is that piece of, one of the things I noticed in that time, and I don't know how much of it was also because of the fact we're continuing to live through a pandemic, and we're not, I don't think, out of the woods yet, but really I was very conscious of how tired people were, and how not full people's cups were in terms of and even I noticed personally, like I pride myself somewhat on being able to engage meaningfully with different, but in that moment I just, with seeing it unfold, and if people in my world were showing social media that supported it, I really was feeling harmful to me personally. And so what I've been able to do, because one of the things I think is we need to keep talking across the table, even if our views are different. It's about how do we, find ways to stay in the conversation, find ways. And I had an opportunity where someone I care about ended up telling me that they supported what was happening. And we had some really amazing, a series of conversations, because I'm like, I love this person, I respect this person, and they're supporting something that is really concerning to me. And I think some of the conversations we had invited some curiosity. I'm not going to say that I necessarily understood the perspective, but I understood the spirit, that somehow this person thought that they were aligning themselves with freedom for everybody. And then one of the questions I left him with was, of all the things you could support, if freedom is a priority to you, why was that the movement that you chose to support? And again, I think we have more discussions to have. I think, as you said, there is an opportunity for us, whether we're, whatever hat we're wearing, but as citizens in this country, you get the community you invest in. And so if we don't want to see things like the convoy suddenly pop up as considerable movements, how do we keep fostering conversations? How do we, as you said, form solidarity, that we recognize we may have causes that we're partial to, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's Black lives, Indigenous solidarity. How do we recognize that it's all of us that need to be working together, that we're stronger together? It's that idea of like turning a hand, as fingers alone, they're not as effective, but once they come together, there's a strength there that, and a resilience, I'd say that's another thing that I'm sitting with as well. So coming to kind of the topic of resilience, and I know we have a couple of minutes left here, I want to know, how do you resource yourself for this work? You're involved in so many things. You're a mom, you're working full time, you're trying to seed and launch and drive and support and facilitate this movement here in Halton. What are the things that you do? Like, what are the commitments to you as Gennile the human, so that you can keep doing this? Like, what are this is a question I'll be asking a couple of my folks over the next few weeks, is what is your strategy for self-care? How do you resource yourself for equity work?
Yeah, I definitely make sure I rest. I do self-care every day. It's not like something that I wait for the weekend to do. I really make sure that it is embedded in my daily routine. A lot of grounding, a lot of meditation, eating well, and taking care of myself. So in terms of like going out for walks, doing meetings outside in the park, I think that sort of form of self-care is a certain level to the resistance to the systems that are in place today that kind of keeps you hitting the rat race and hitting those hurdles, I try to make sure that I don't burn out, and make sure my cup is full before I pour out into others. So I've really made a conscious choice of making sure that my spirit and my body and my mind are good to go every time I wake up in the morning.
That's awesome. And I feel like enough of us in this work don't talk about that, about how important it is. And as someone who is doing equity work from a different standpoint, it's been something I've personally been really working to build my practice and to not take for granted that I'll have this bottomless pit of energy. And because I feel like, the work is so sacred, and, for us to be choosing to anyone who's choosing to do this work, that a reminder that the work can't happen at the expense of our well-being. That really, it's a marathon and not a sprint. And you're the athlete here, so I shouldn't really say that, because I like to say I only run if I'm being chased or chasing something. But yeah, no, I just want to, really appreciating the fact that we finally got to have you on the show, to engage in some of the questions that you and I talk about, when we connect. And I think there's a lot of amazing work happening in this community. I invite viewers to make the time to, if you haven't heard of Halton Black Voices before, to visit their website, to look at all the amazing events, especially, Gennile, what you've named here, that you can support. Your children can get involved. So there's really is something for everybody. And really the organizations that you're in partnership with as well. I think you take that spirit of, it's not just about lifting your boat, it's about lifting up the work of other organizations as well who are, I'd say, on the right side of the conversation. But yeah, is there anything in our closing, anything else you want to offer as we close?
Yeah, I just want to say, with other organizers, reach out to each other, take care of each other. I think that's a way of self-care as well. I know being an activist or an ally can almost be very isolating. So it's important to reach out to community to get that support as well.
Love that. Well, listen, it's been fabulous to be in conversation with you. I can't believe how quickly this conversation's whipped by. We'll have to have you back for a part 2 at some point, I think. But really holding gratitude for our audience today. Thank you for joining us. And please keep your comments and suggestions for guests coming. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, in our community, equity, diversity is our strength. And continue to join us and watch with us each week. And we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.